All right, good morning, church. It is my sincere desire that no matter how you're approaching today, however your life is at this moment, maybe some of you are in a fantastic season of life, or some of you maybe are not in a fantastic season of life. Maybe you're in a challenging, unnerving, scary, there's all kinds of seasons of life. My supreme hope for you is that whatever your situation, good or bad or anywhere in between, that your future is much, much better. Much, much better than where you're at right now. Now, I say that mindful of two things, of both the diversity of our situations as we're approaching today, but also mindful of this very true story that we're going to be looking at as we look at the life of Joseph further. We're in our third week in our Joseph series. The first week we looked at the archaeology and the truthfulness and the incredible reality that this story took place. It happened. Then last week we talked about Joseph's father and their family dynamics and basically the absence of appropriate love of Jacob to his wife Leah and the kids and that dynamic in the home there. Well, we're in week 3 of our study, and we're going to be turning to Genesis chapter 37 and finally actually start looking closely at Joseph and his story. This story in Genesis 37 takes place precisely in the year 1889 BC. According to the timeline of the Bible. Very easy to trace from, you can trace it back from certain dates in Solomon's time all the way back, and you can know 17-year-old Joseph, and this story takes place in 1889 BC. It's a true story, like I said, and we're going to look at 4 encouragements. I've got 4 words for today that I'm just going to bring up to nudge you forward, as like markers, like go this way. Be encouraged by this, be exhorted in this direction. 4 words to encourage us, and they all revolve around one concept. And this concept of hope, of living with hope, living with very real hope. So as we're going to look at Joseph's stories here, it's about to get very dark. It's near the beginning of his story, and it hasn't been all that cheery yet thus far, but it's about to get more dark and more discouraging, more painful, more disappointing. He's going to be treated so entirely evilly, but this is what I want you to know. No matter where the story goes today, this is what I want you to grab from today. That whatever your context, whatever your background, whatever's going on in your life, whatever your situation, pain, hopeless, full of life, full of joy, whatever it is, maybe you feel trapped. Maybe you feel just unsure about what's going on. I just want you to hold on both now and for all time. There is always hope for you. Maybe that word's for today. Maybe someday this will replay in your mind in the future. There is always, always, always hope for you and for your future. That's what I want you to hear today. And you're wondering, how can you make such a claim? Well, because our God is just like what we're going to be seeing in this Joseph story. He's like this. He's never changing. He is still like this today. And so because he's like this, we can live with hope. Okay, here we go. Genesis chapter 37. If you don't have your Bibles, that's fine. The words are on the screen. If not, you can make sure. You can make sure that I'm treating you right in this. But here we're going to go. I'm going to start reading. I'm going to make a few quick notes as we go along. But Genesis 37, starting in verse 1. Jacob, who is Joseph's father, he lived in the land where his father had stayed, in the land of Canaan. These are the family records of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph. 17. That was like 5 years ago for me. You can do the math for yourself. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended sheep. It used to be funny, but now I get older and it's just ridiculous now. I get it. Joseph tended sheep with his brothers. The young man was working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. his father's wives. So that means he's working with Dan and Naphtali and Gad and Asher. He's with those four. And he brought a bad report about them to their father. One of the things we're going to see in Joseph in the days to come, it's already surfacing. Joseph has some incredible natural, nation-shaping, world-saving leadership attributes. Okay, we're going to see that. And they're already developing and they're already surfacing. He's got this natural integrity, which is required for that kind of nation-changing integrity, leadership, and all that kind of stuff. So he's got this surfacing, and it's fantastic and it's important for his future, but it's going to be really annoying for his older brothers. All right, so this is going to continue up. So he's got that, and he brings a bad report about his brothers there. But this leadership stuff in him is surfacing even at age 17. Verse 3, so now Israel, which is Jacob, another name, Jacob gets his name changed to Israel. That's another story. But his father loved Joseph more than his other sons, because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age. Now, this comment, I don't really understand this comment. So I'm just going to say this is a mysterious comment to me. His other son Benjamin is going to be born in his older age, but more importantly, there cannot be that many years difference between his older brothers and him, because they're all born in Haran before Jacob moves back, his older brothers, and he was only there for 20 years. But he doesn't get married until 7 years in. So if his oldest brother, Reuben, is a honeymoon baby, okay, and Joseph is born on the last day, which I definitely don't think is the case, the maximum there can be between his older brother and he himself is 13 years, okay? Maximum that there can be. So yeah, Jacob, his father, has, well, let's see, 10 and then 11 with Jacob, and then he has a daughter for sure. So he's got 10, 11, 12 kids, at least 13 and under when they're journeying back to the promised land. That sounds like a road trip, right? That sounds super great. Oh yeah, so, okay, but it says born in his old age. Here we go. So we're continuing to read on here. And he made a robe of many colors for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. Then Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. Hey guys, let's listen to this. There we were, binding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly my sheaf stood up, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. Are you really going to reign over us? His brothers asked him. Are you really going to rule us? So they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. Clearly, he also told them the meaning, because the dream and what he had said. So that didn't really go over well. Okay, that whole dream and thing with his brothers. So you got 17-year-old Joseph here, and he is growing in this world-changing, nation-shaping, nation-saving leadership and giftings and all that. Totally blessed with powerful leadership skills. Totally blessed like that. But what he still needs to grow in is simple wisdom. Simple wisdom. And so my first encouragement is this single word, wisdom. This idea of growing, continuing, wherever you're at in life, continuing to grow in wisdom. We're going to see more in the story ahead, but 17-year-old Joseph is being given a very special dream here. It's a very special, it's important, and we're going to talk more about it in a second, but the significant thing, it's going to be very significant for him to know and to hold on to and to understand. But the fact that he tells this dream to his brothers, it just doesn't display that much wisdom. It just doesn't, that simple wisdom. Just because you hear from God and you're right and it's true, doesn't necessarily mean it's wise and right to go around and tell everybody what you've heard. That may take some discernment. That may take some wisdom. Joseph hasn't grown yet in this wisdom. And so my encouragement for us all is simply this: keep pursuing greater and greater and greater godly wisdom. Wherever you're at, whether you're young, whether you're old, you can still grow in this. You can still be growing in this. Proverbs 24:14 says this. It says, realize that wisdom is the same for you. If you find it, if you find wisdom, you will have a future, and your hope will never fade. If you find wisdom, you will have a future, and your hope. Now, I just referenced this proverb to remind you that there is a very real connection between wisdom and this message of hope, living with hope. They are connected, and this discovering of greater and greater wisdom is part of this path of living with very real hope and this never fading, according to this proverb, never fading hope. And it's encouraging as you look at the Bible that wisdom is one of those things you can grow in. You've got the book of Proverbs. It is to pass on wisdom. It's to help us to grow and become more wise. And there's other books as well, like Ecclesiastes and things like that. But we can grow in this. So my encouragement for us today is to keep on together pursuing greater and greater godly wisdom so that our hope will never fade. It's what I want for us. I want us to live with well-placed, ever-increasing, never-fading hope. All right, let's keep reading and see what happens here. So that was verse 8. Continuing on in verse 9, it says this. It says, then he, Joseph, had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Look, he said, I had another dream. And this time, the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. He told his father and brothers, but his father rebuked him. What kind of dream is this that you have had? He said, are your mother and brothers and I going to come and bow down to the ground before you? Clearly, he'd made sure that they understood it. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Okay, guys, this idea of dreams and God speaking through dreams, it's kind of a hot topic in different circles in Christianity today, this idea of God speaking through dreams. But if you want to be a Bible person, and I do, it doesn't matter if it's weird. It doesn't matter if it's weird. It is inescapably biblical. It is inescapably one of the ways that God repeatedly speaks to people throughout the Bible. And I'm not even saying his people, to people in general. You have a wide variety of examples. You start off with this guy named Abimelech. Abimelech has this dream, this warning dream about Abraham's wife. Abimelech is not a believer. He's not a believer at all, and yet God is speaking to him through a dream. You've got God speaking to Abraham through a dream. You've got Jacob and that ladder thing going on between the angels of God ascending and descending. You've got Joseph here having dreams. You've got Laban, who is Joseph's great pain patriarch. I don't know. His father's father, I don't know, something like that. Father-in-law, his father's father. Uncle, something like that. They're connected. All right. So he's got a dream. He is clearly not a believer. It's a warning dream. You've got Pharaoh having dreams, not a believer. You've got Gideon is encouraged by a God-given dream to the enemy, and he just overhears it being said and interpreted, and he's encouraged. You've got Solomon having a dream, and God asking him what he wants in a dream, but it's legit, it's real, and the answer is wisdom. You've got Daniel having dreams. You've got Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, having dreams that are from God. You've got Jesus' earthly sort of father, Joseph having dreams to be moving to Egypt and back and then to Nazareth. He's getting led around by direction and dreams. You have Pontius Pilate's wife having a dream, and she says, I've been troubled in a dream by this Jesus guy. So, don't mess with this. And you got Peter having dreams and Paul having dreams. There's so many more even examples of a wide variety of types of people that God speaks to in dreams. And so the message to all humanity is, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? Biblically, God speaks through dreams all through the Bible to all types of people. God speaks through dreams. On Pentecost Sunday, Peter's preaching. He quotes in the prophet Joel, and he says in Acts 2:17, "And it will be in the last days, says God, that I will pour out my spirit on all humanity. Then your sons and your daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams." This is not an Old Testament thing only. It is an all-time thing, last days. New Testament times. If you want to be a Bible person and embrace the truth of the reality of the world as described by the Bible and what our God is like, you have to conclude that God is a God who speaks and can speak through dreams. And really to you in your dreams. Now that said, not all of your dreams, as you know, are from God, right? And that's also clear in the Bible. Like in Ecclesiastes, you see people can dream because of stress. They can have dreams because of stress and worries and anxieties. See that in Ecclesiastes 5:3, Isaiah 29. You can see this idea that people can have dreams simply because they're hungry or they're thirsty, and they can just be responding to life in those ways. I'm not saying all your dreams are from God. Sometimes it is just you and what's going on with you. And I also want to say, not only that, there are also false dreams that seem to be from God. False God dreams, right? Which we can think are from God, but they're actually intended by the enemy intentionally to lead us away from God. Like in Jeremiah chapter 23, you see an example of that maybe, or in Zechariah 10:2, you see an example of that. Sometimes we have these false God dreams, and along that line, sometimes the enemy does this, sends us dreams to distract us, to discourage us, to fill us with fears, and to fill us with worries and anxieties, to bring fear into our hearts, to steal our hope, to steal our joy, to steal our confidence that God is with us and God will help us. In a few weeks, Valentine's Day actually, in a few weeks, I plan on talking more about understanding dreams, because that's where we're going to go in the Joseph story. Joseph is going to be doing some dream interpretations. We're going to talk about it a bit. Joseph is going to be doing that, but for now, what I really want to make sure that we establish is, number one, God does biblically speak through dreams. Simple. And two, not all the dreams that you're having are God speaking to you, and some of them can even be an attempt of the enemy to steer you away and to confuse you and turn you away from God. So it's got to be careful there. I suppose maybe more accurately, I guess I would say not all dreams are directly from God. They may be from the enemy to discourage. Think of Job. Job is being plagued by nightmares from the enemy. All right? Tormented by nightmares. They can be made up from your own thoughts, your own things and desires. I'm sure you can think of that. But I believe that no matter what kind of dreams or where the source is, that God is able to bring you some insight through any of them as you take the time to listen. What's going on? Well, Brian, there's this darkness in your heart. Pay attention to that. Or, well, this was a plan of the enemies to discourage you, so know that and be encouraged that it's not that way. You know what I mean? Things like that. Since I have on my phone, I'll save that side note for a moment. Okay, so there's that. Okay, I'll say it anyways. Since the fourth month, January, February, March, April, since April 2013, I have on my phone in my lists, the list things, just dreams that I've had in the middle of the night. Just kind of date it, and I just kind of write it out when I'd wake up or something like that. Just kind of been tracking that, just in case God is speaking, because I do believe that God speaks through dreams, and I want to be paying attention to that. Okay, so that's back to the first point. God does biblically speak through dreams, cover to cover. Why does he do that? He does it to give warnings. He does it to give direction. And he does it to give you hope. Those are the three ways that you see over and over why God speaks through dreams: to give direction, to give warnings, and to bring hope. Joseph here in this story isn't being very wise about his dreams, even when he understands the dream's meaning. Not all the dreams are meant to be shared. Joseph hasn't learned that yet, but he's about to. Cringe. He's about to learn that wasn't wise. Nevertheless, God is speaking to him, and these dreams are given to Joseph to be powerful anchors of hope for him. He is about to go through 13 horrible years, and God is gifting him with these dreams that he can hold on to through the 13 worst, darkest, most discouraging, most painful, most disappointing years of his life. These dreams are a gift to him. God speaks to give direction and hope. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? My second word for today is listen. Listen. Are you listening? If Joseph doesn't pay attention, and he's like, oh, that's just a dream. If he doesn't understand that God is speaking and encouraging a hope-filled word for him, if he doesn't understand this, where can he anchor his hope through the dark years? God has encouraged him. But if he doesn't receive it, if he doesn't listen to it, if he isn't paying attention, where is he supposed to anchor his hope in those years when he's sold off into slavery? When his brothers are planning on murdering him? When he's in anguish and when he's trapped in a pit, when he's thrown into prison for a life sentence? Where does he anchor his hope? One of the reasons that God speaks and encourages is so that people can have hope in their hard times, in their painful times, in their most discouraging time. And so, are you even trying to listen? Are you even trying to listen? There is a huge chance. There's a huge chance that God has given you encouragement for now, for your future. There's a huge chance that God has given you encouragement, but you haven't received it. And you just discard it as, oh, it's nothing. It was just a dream, or it's just nothing. And so you've lost your God-given encouragement. And you don't have anything to hang on to right now, maybe. Or you don't have anything to hang on to for the days ahead. When God gave you something, he gave you a precious gift. If you struggle with this idea that God might speak to you through your dreams, I understand. I very, very much understand. It is way outside my background. Way outside my background. And if you can't understand like how that dream you had could be from God, I also understand that. But so does Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar and Pharaoh and all these guys who have dreams and they're like, I don't understand at all. Like I get it. It's a hard concept, this idea of dreams and understanding dreams. And I gave those warnings earlier, but I just want to make sure you don't reject the idea outright. Because biblically, God does this. And when he does, it's good. And when he does, it's for a reason. And when he does, you're going to want that direction. You're going to want that hope. You're going to want that warning. It's one of the more common ways in the Bible. It's one of the more common ways that God speaks in the Bible. Again, like I said, we're going to talk more about that in a few weeks, about understanding it. We're going to pick that up on Valentine's Day. But let's keep going here. One of the last thoughts on dreams, specifically in verse 10 and 11, which we just read, is you see their responses. Joseph's father rebukes him for sharing this dream and for having this dream. His brothers are jealous of him, and his father also keeps it in mind. And I just throw that out there and remind you that we have different responses to this idea of God speaking, and sometimes we internally scoff and reject, or maybe we just have dark responses. But I just encourage you, remember it's biblical, and to think through the right responses, and maybe hear this warning from Jacob, who rebukes, and his brothers who respond in evil ways, all right? Be careful how you respond to your own dreams or as you hear other people's. Anyways, so let's keep going. Let's pick up in verse 12. We're going to read a while. I might stop and make a few quick notes here, but verse 12 says this: his brothers had gone to pasture their flocks. Oh, that's fine. I should keep reading through that. His brothers had gone to pasture their flocks, their father's flocks at Shechem. Okay, so Shechem, 50 miles away. And actually, when I read that, I was like, oh, man. That's kind of surprising they would go to Shechem, because only 3 chapters earlier, they had just, at least 2 of the boys, Simeon and Levi, I believe, had just murdered all the men of Shechem. So, and they left there, okay? So there's a bit of like, maybe that's not the safest place to hang out. But you find out in Joshua chapter 24 that their father Jacob had purchased land there. So maybe the plan was to go to this land that they'd purchased. But they'd gone to Shechem. Shechem's pretty significant. Abraham has his first God dream there. In the land. He has in Shechem. Joseph is going to be final resting place. He's going to be buried there in Shechem. They're going to renew the covenant there in Shechem in Joshua. It's a pretty significant place, but I'm like, whoa, why Shechem? That sounds pretty dangerous, and it's 50 miles away from where they've been staying. Israel, which is also Jacob, said to Joseph, your brothers, are pasturing the flocks at Shechem. Get ready, I'm sending you to them. I'm ready, Joseph replied. I don't know if it was that enthusiastic, but there he goes. Then Israel said to him, go and see how your brothers, at 17 years old, he's going on a 50-mile journey. Okay, that's great. Go and see how your brothers in the flocks are doing and bring word back to me. Again, kind of more of a supervisory role. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron and went to Shechem. A man found him there, wandering in the field, and asked him, what are you looking for? I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph said. Can you tell me where they are pasturing their flocks? They've moved on from here, the man said. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph set out after his brothers and found them at Dothan. That's 15 more miles north. So 65 more miles away from Hebron, where they started out. I kind of started thinking, I wonder if it's just bad times, where they have to journey so far to feed the flocks. Is it just one of those difficult seasons for shepherding? Verse 18, they saw Joseph in the distance, and it must have been some distance, and before he had reached them, they plotted to kill him. Either it was a really elaborate plot, or let's kill him. Yeah, okay. I'm not exactly how to read that, but they had time between when they saw him and when he showed up to make a plan. They said to one another, here comes that dreamer. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal ate him, then we will see what becomes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, let's not take his life. Reuben also said to them, don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit and in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him, intending to rescue him from their hands and return him to his father. Okay, this is Reuben. He's the oldest. He's the firstborn. He's the firstborn. He's probably around 30 at this time. If Joseph's 17, add 13 maximum. He's around 29, 30. It's got to be somewhat nice for Joseph to know that he has a little bit of an advocate in his oldest brother here. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off his robe, the robe of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal, as you do when you do that to your brother. They looked up. Well, that was hard work. He was so scrappy. He was so scrappy. Let's eat. All right. They looked up, and there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying aromatic gum, balsam, and resin going down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, Judah, right? Judah, the line of Jesus of Nazareth. This is Judah's idea. Just tracking that. Hashtag more like Judas, right? Judas. Judah said to his brothers, hey, let's make money. Sounds like Judas. What do we gain if we kill our brother? I mean, that's fun and all. Let's come up with a more lucrative idea and cover up his blood. Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him, for he is a... Now, I'm making light of this. This is so disturbing. I hope you're finding this disturbing. Let's not lay a hand on him, for he's our brother, our own flesh. Let's have some limits here. And they agreed. Then when the Midianite traders passed by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit, so clearly not everybody's there. Reuben's not there at this moment. So some of them made this idea. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, the boy is gone. What am I going to do? So they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a young goat, dipped the robe in its blood. They sent the robe of many colors to their father, and they sent it. They didn't take it. They sent it. You take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. No. Let's send helper boy. Okay. They sent the robe of many colors to their father and said, we found this. Examine it. Is it not your son? Is it your son's robe or not? His father recognized it. It is my son's robe, he said. A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph's been torn to pieces. And then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth around his waist, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters tried to comfort him. Daughters. Not just one. There's daughters. Tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will go down to Sheol to my son, mourning. And his father wept to him. I mean, just think of the wickedness of this lie. The devastation of all they've done, not just to Joseph, but you're going to find out about their guilt, but also the father just grieving. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. I mean, there's so many historical markers all over Egypt that talk about the reality of the willing slave market in Egypt to buy slaves from caravans like this. Okay. In the briefest of moments here, Joseph has gone from favorite son to slavery to slavery. And he's gone into this place of deep, deep anguish. Anguish. And I say anguish because we know what's going on with Joseph. His brothers describe it later, the anguish. They describe it in Genesis chapter 42, in verse 21. They say, obviously, they say later on, obviously we're being punished for what we did to our brothers. We saw his deep distress. Joseph's not just rolling with it. I had a dream. No big deal, guys. No. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this trouble has come onto us. And you just picture this 17-year-old Joseph. He's thinking, he's going to be murdered. He's thinking he's going to be murdered and then being stripped of his cloak and sold. And sometimes when bad things happen and devastating things happen, we can kind of just assume that all God's hopes and plans and promises for our lives are now over. That's the lie we can believe. That whatever God had intended cannot happen now because of this devastating moment that we've just experienced. Just because you experience devastating moments does not believe that God's plans for you are over. That's not the case. But he goes into some pretty terrible years here. 13 difficult years of rising up and being thrown down even worse. Rising up in his family as a younger son to a supervisory role, sold into slavery. Sold into slavery into Potiphar's house, rising up in his household, being falsely accused. I don't want to give it away, but it does. And then rising up in prison. And then it's just devastating after devastation. All right, so he goes on to this. My third word for us today as we look at Joseph and his situation is persevere. Whatever your story, whatever your situation, whatever your context, all the saints or at least many of the saints in the Bible, endure times of great suffering. And they have to persevere. You think of Joseph, you think of Moses, you think of David and Peter and Paul and Jesus. Great suffering that they endure. Now, there is no promise. Contrary to what you may have been taught in the past, there is no promise that your life is going to be easy or wonderful or all good and no bad. The promise is not a pain-free life in Jesus. The promise is instead that he will be with you, that he is paying attention to you, that he will help you, that there is great reward for hanging in there, for enduring, for overcoming, for persevering. That God has not forgotten you. Those are the promises that for the difficult and painful times in life. If you're in a dark season right now, if you're in a difficult time, you're not alone. You have so many saints to look back at and be encouraged by. People who understand how you're feeling, who understand how you're going through, and their word for you is to keep on believing and keep on hoping. If you're scanning through the Psalms, you'll come across Psalm 31. The psalmist in Psalm 31, he understands hard times. And you read this, starting in verse 9, the psalmist is saying, "Be gracious to me, Lord, because I am in distress." You may know what that's like. "My eyes are worn out from angry sorrow." My whole being as well, my whole being is worn out. "Indeed, my life is consumed with grief. My years with groaning. My strength has failed." You know what this is like? Because of my sinfulness and my bones waste away, I am ridiculed by all my adversaries and even my neighbors. I am dreaded by my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street run from me. I'm being pushed away. I have no friends. I'm being isolated, and I am forgotten. Nobody remembers me. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody knows my pain. Nobody knows my situation. I'm alone. I'm forgotten, gone from memory, like a dead person, like broken pottery. I am like broken pottery. Some of you are like, whoa, that person knows how I feel. They go on to say in verse 14, "But I trust in you, Lord. I trust in you. I say, you are my God. The course of my life is in your hands." I'm not a victim of whatever may happen. The course of my life is in your power. Deliver me from the power of my enemies and from my persecutors. Show your favor to your servant. That's the prayer of the afflicted. Show your favor to your servant. Save me by your faithful love. That psalmist understands and is persevering. He is writing this and persevering in hard times. Psalm 69 the same way. He says, "Save me, O God, for the water has risen to my neck." You know how that feels like sometimes? The water has risen to my neck. I have sunk deep in the mud. There is no footing. I have come into deep waters, and a flood sweeps over me. I am weary from my crying. These are what dark time feels like. My throat is parched. My eyes fail looking for my God. It just seems like I'm alone. I can't even see. Verse 19, "You know the insults I endure, my shame, my disgrace. You're aware of all my adversaries. Insults have broken my heart." Insults have broken my heart, and I am in despair. I waited for sympathy, but there was none. For comforters, but found none. Skipping down to verse 29. "But as for me, poor and in pain, let your salvation protect me, God." Down to verse 32. "The humble will see and rejoice. You who seek God, take heart. For the Lord listens." The Lord listens to the needy. He does not despise his own who are prisoners. Friends, sometimes maybe most of the time, the most painful years, the most painful seasons of our lives, the most disappointing times, they can come from our own families, from our own family situations, like Joseph here. And if this is your situation, Don't give up. God sees. God sees. He sees you. Call on him. Call on him to help you. He is with you. It doesn't feel like he's with me, Brian. It's okay. He is. He is, whether you feel that way or not. Don't be like one of those people who turn against God when the times are difficult and say, what is it? It's not worth following you, God. It's not worth following you because bad things have happened. I followed you so that good things only would happen. Don't be one of those people who turn on God like that. Don't walk away. Instead, run to him. Hold fast. Grip tight. Grip tight to the one who's paying attention. Maybe the only one who is paying attention, who sees, who knows, who understands. Hard times have that great potential when you run to Jesus to let hope in your life go up and hopelessness go down. In fact, when you're reading in the book of Romans, you come across this in Romans chapter 5. He says, and not only that, Paul is writing, but we also rejoice in our afflictions, our hard times, in the terrible times of life, because we know that affliction produces endurance. Perseverance, endurance. Endurance produces proven character, and proven character produces hope. And proven character produces hope. This hope will not disappoint us. I urge you, if you are in a hard time, keep going. Persevere. There's so much good that you can gain by enduring, by persevering. And one of those amazing things is hope, and that's also our final word, not a surprise. Word number 4, encouragement number 4 is hope. If you look ahead and your days look dark or bleak, I want you to hear from me, there is always hope for your future. There's always hope for your future. You can speculate as to what you believe your future will be, but you have no idea what's going to happen. It can look good, it can look bad, but the reality is you have no idea what's in store for your future. God is able to bring change into your life for the good. And anyway, actually, but I'm going to focus on the good. At any moment, anything can happen. Anything can happen because God's real. You are never stuck without hope. You have no idea what can happen. If you look ahead and you don't like what you see, call on God. He is listening. He's listening. That's number 1. There's always hope for your future. 2, even if things don't work out in life as you hope, we as believers in Jesus have amazing eternal hope. We have amazing, very real, eternal hope of the most happy and wonderful existence forever. For those of us who have given our lives to Jesus, friends, this hope we have for eternal life is true. It is real. It's hard to grasp, but it is still, nevertheless, true. True. And at the end of the age, if you hold on, if you follow Jesus, if you give your life to Jesus, you will hear, well done, my good and faithful servant, come share in your master's happiness, and you will be welcomed into eternity with God. As Paul says in Romans 6, the gift of God, the salvation, is eternal life through Christ Jesus, our Lord. So friends, whatever your context, whatever your situation, whatever your past, whatever your afflictions, whatever your pain, whatever your hopelessness you may be in now or in someday in the future, may these words echo in your mind for all time. There is always hope for you. There is always hope for you and your future. Better days are coming. Hopefully in this life, but definitely in the life to come if you've given your life to Jesus and been saved. It's good news. 3 challenges for today. 2, and I made up a third one, which really is not a challenge. Number 1, I want you to write down any dreams you may have the second you wake up. Some of you read it faster than I was able to read this out loud. Write down any dreams you may have the second you wake up, either on your phone or in a notebook right next to your bed. Hold on to them. We'll talk about processing them in a couple weeks from now. Number 2, spend time today specifically asking God to help you reach a better future than what you have right now. Not that you're being discontent or greedy or anything like that. Just ask. Just ask. And number 3, refrain from throwing any family members into pits for the next 90 days. It's from the passage, it seems like a good application. I assume that all of you will at least do one of those. If not, we have Adam here you can talk to. All right.